Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope you're all doing well in the world right now.
Hi everybody, Matt Guy here. Hope everybody is transplendent with pleasure this evening.
That's a thesaurus job if I've heard one before. When did you learn of that word?
My vocabulary is wide and far-reaching, Stu Hall. I just dumb it down when I speak to your fine self.
Oh, well, that's all fair enough. Hello, everyone.
Fellas, it's been an absolute... I can't even tell you how long it's been since we've done a top five. It feels like it's been forever and a day. The last one, I think, was with ourselves and Tom Kearney. Is that correct?
I think that was the Kung Fu one, the martial arts one.
It's a good episode, that. I remember... I've made a list of all the films. I can't even find half the films that Tom mentioned. They're so, obscure in this country. And the ones that I can find, you just can't get them with bloody the subtitles. But, yeah. So, yeah, we're back with a top five episode, and this one is going to be sequels better than their originals. There's only a few rules for this one. Big sprawling franchises don't count. It's got to be a self-contained story. No spiritual sequels. They have to be the same characters. So basically, Hot Fuzz wouldn't count for this one. Same goes for hard reboots. They're also a no. But soft reboots, which are basically a sequel, but as long as it's a continuation of the main story, I think we're okay with those. But to be honest, as long as you can justify your pick, I'm quite happy with whichever you go with. I've got a couple that I think I may have to justify that you may not allow. But that's very much de rigueur with the way we do things around these parts. So we'll go around the table. I'll go first, then Matt, and then Stu. 5-1, and we'll after our second, we'll do a few honourable mentions like we do usually. So my fifth place pick is Fast and Furious 7. I wish I'd had time to rewatch the Fast franchise before doing this, because I'm not 100% sure if Fast 7 is the best one. But it's one of the ones where I think the best cast has all come together on this. So The Rock is now on the side of the good guys, and Jason Statham has been brought in as the main villain. Obviously, the first film with The Rock was when he was the copper who was trying to stop them from doing it, which was Fast 5, which was brilliant. But this is the first one after Hans died, so it's in continuity after Tokyo Drift. So I think this is the first one where it feels big and proper and really over the top, like we sort of love about Fast and Furious. That's the reason it's fifth, though, is because I think there may be a better one in that series. It's either going to be 5 or 7, but that's my first pick, is Fast 7. Matt, what's your fifth place?
So my fifth place is 10 Cloverfield Lane. Now, this is kind of skating on thin ice for my first pick, really, because it is a sequel of sorts. It's kind of in the same world as Cloverfield, a spiritual successor, you might say. Where Cloverfield was this kind of found footage, bit of a mess, monster kind of movie. 10 Cloverfield Lane is much more of a psychological thriller, real slow burner with an amazing performance from John Goodman in a role that you just don't expect from him. He's not this big, cuddly, funny, larger than life character. He's this mean and brooding and very, very sinister character. But then you make you think through the whole movie, how is this even partly part of the Cloverfield world, until bang, the very last minute, and then the whole film flips on its head. It's very, very tense the whole way through. It's almost uncomfortable, and I just think it touches on themes, and it does it in a way that I much preferred over Cloverfield.
Yeah, that's probably like sixth place on mine. That was in the top 5 right up until about 20 minutes ago. Well, that's a properly good pick, that one is. And as you say, like John Goodman, his portrayal of the character in that film, there's some real menace to it. And it's Yeah, really good pick that is. And as well, I think that's probably one of the films with the biggest increase. Because like the
Yeah,
first one's fine. I'd probably say it's maybe a 5.5. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
just on the right side of okay. But I think that 10 Cloverfield Lane is a solid 8. I think it's a really good movie.
It did really great numbers as well. It was almost kind of 10 times its budget it made. So for a film that was definitely riding the coattails of the success of Cloverfield, but it did really good numbers for a sequel to something that isn't a triple A big budget blockbuster.
Stu, who's coming in at number 5 on your list?
I think this is the first controversial point of the night, morning, whenever you listen to this. It is Ghostbusters 2. Um, I watched both of these back to back for probably the first time I've ever done that the other day in preparation for Afterlife coming out. And I know that it's sacrilege and I'm going to get hated for by certain people who listen to this, but it's just a better film. It's definitely funnier because it just is. The first one has aged terribly, and I'm not going to go down the terrible demon dog animation and some of the effects because it's pretty much it's very early 80s, 80. It would have been made in 83, so coming out in 84. So you got to expect that kind of thing. But I think it knew what it was. There's a different tone to the second one compared to the first, and it's reading up on it. It's very much influenced by the real Ghostbusters series,
Yeah.
and the characters feel like the series characters rather than the first film. And I love the series. And looking back, this is going on 2021 vision, not from back in the past. Now, as of this year, watching them films, the second one is better than the first. It's more entertaining, it's more funny, and you got Vigo, so everyone's a winner.
It's a film that was on my honourable mentions list because I don't know if it's a better film, but I know I've got warmer memories of Ghostbusters 2. I remember going to the Odeon in Dudley, as was way back when. So I remember seeing it on the big screen, and I know I saw the first one, but I don't really remember it that much. So I just thought maybe it's my personal feelings towards the movie as opposed to the movie itself is why I love Ghostbusters 2. Because it is a film that's hated pretty much, isn't it? And I don't quite get why
Yeah,
it's hated because like you say, it is a good film still.
yeah. I mean, its IMDb score and everything's way down on the first one. And it's like, I mean, I'm not even talking about that nonsense from a few years ago. I've not seen it. I'm never going to watch it. It's pointless, waste of time. But and the fact that it's just been thrown away, it's not even canon at all in any way, shape, or form. Um, but it gets lumped in with that as well, and you think, well, why? Because I know they didn't make any more after it, but that's probably down to a lot of things, mainly Bill Murray. Um, but then he did come back for the game later on, and then whatever. But yeah, I don't get the hate for it. Maybe because it's a bit too much of a departure from the first. Maybe that's got something to do with it. But as an entertaining film, I was more entertained watching the second one than the original.
I think that's totally fair. Matt, you're a Ghostbusters fan, aren't you? Where do you stand on one versus two?
I'm not sure where you're getting your info from, Andy. I'm not a big Ghostbusters
Oh, I
person,
thought you
really.
were.
No, I was late to the I was born late to the party, I guess, for Ghostbusters. So it kind of never really it's come to my it came to my spectrum like quite late on in my life. Same thing with like Goonies and The
Mm,
Warriors and the Lost Boys and stuff. It's just it's in a part of history that I've just seen way too late to appreciate. I think so. It's fine. Ghostbusters is okay. But like it's in the same kind of you're gonna hate this. I'm so sorry, Stu. It's just in the same kind of category as like Honey I Shrunk the Kids and
No, well,
that kind of
that's
world. Like
that's absolutely fair because if you aren't there at the time, then you wouldn't
mm.
appreciate it as much. Because
yeah,
I mean, I haven't seen either of them films for a long time. I'm guessing they don't stand up really well at all.
No.
I mean, this stuff in Ghostbusters, it's like a bit. Well, he's it's a bit rapey. And even back then, I mean, he gets a ghost blowjob in the first one, for fuck's sake, and it's a kids' film. So um, that's a completely valid statement to make. It makes total sense. All your youths, you just been lost forever. It's not
That's
your
it.
fault.
Missed the boat, didn't they? And to be fair, anything with Rick Moranis in anyway is good, so that's fine. So on to number 4, and my pick is The Bourne Ultimatum. Like, it's very rare for a sequel to be better than an original anyway, but I think that Supremacy is better than Identity, and I think Ultimatum is better than Supremacy. I think this is the trilogy went just from strength to strength, and then sadly it shat the bed when Jeremy Renner came in. And by the time they brought out the 5th instalment, Jason Bourne, it just was what it originally was, which is a bit of a shame, really, because that original trilogy was excellent. I think it's such an interesting film, and you could watch each of those films stand alone and take something away from it, or you can watch it as a trilogy. And I think that's a very rare thing, especially for this day and age, to be honest, because it is generally, especially with films that are made just to be trilogies now. This one wasn't. It just so happened that it worked into a trilogy, but they can be taken of their own merits. I think it's a really, really good series. I'm a big fan of Matt Damon anyway. He does get a bit of a pass on some of the shit that he has done in the years. A bit like Ben Affleck, really. I think it's the whole Good Will Hunting thing. I excuse them for some nonsense because they've done good in the past. So, Bourne Ultimatum's mine. What
I
do
mean,
you pair think about the trilogy?
I was thinking of it more of a trilogy, and that's why I don't count it.
Mm.
You are right that they get better as they go along, but it wasn't planned as a trilogy, so to speak. But I was just looking for it there. I don't know where it's gone, because I bought the box set of them on Blu-ray in a CX in Bath, of all places, for a fiver.
It's a
And
bargain.
I know, in Bath and all, and yeah, great films. Can't argue with the logic behind it. I just took them too much of as a main overarching story than individual films. But yeah, you probably are right.
Mm. Matt, what do you think? Are you a Bourne fan or?
Yeah. I mean, this is a strange analogy now, but Bond now I really enjoy. So the Daniel Craig Bonds and a few of Pierce Brosnan Bonds, I quite enjoy. The Pierce Brosnan ones because they're a bit more camp and a bit more silly, really. But Bond was always classic rock, and the Bourne Ultimatum was always new metal. Bourne Ultimatum was always a bit more hip, a bit more cool, a bit more raw, and a bit more in touch with me as a youth. So I really enjoyed the Bourne franchise. I think it's was definitely a breath of fresh air that was needed in that sillier world of Bond at the time, which was a
Mm.
bit. It was very tongue in cheek and like it was closer to Austin Powers than it realised the Pierce Brosnan Bonds.
Yeah, I think that's a fair critique. Would you say that Bourne saved Bond in a way? I mean,
I,
before Craig, let's just say, were people really
yeah,
that interested?
I think that in the same way that Family Guy forced The Simpsons to change its tact, the Bourne films forced Bond to change its way it looks at itself. So yeah, I definitely think there's the two affected each other for sure.
Cool. Matt, fourth place for you, please.
Fourth place for me is Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Now, Excellent Adventure is fantastic. It's brilliant. I really, really enjoy it. And time travel and all of the fun stuff they do there with Socrates and everybody else is really, really entertaining. However, Bogus Journey, by going through hell and going through death and the afterlife and all that kind of stuff, it just took it to a world that you just didn't expect. And I think it's a more fun film because of it. The time traveling stuff's cool, but it's very much, I don't know. It was just a means to an end, to the end of the Battle of the Bands, and then that was it. But the sequences with death really take that film to the next level for me. The performances from everybody really in the movie, but like William Sadler's William Sadler's portrayal is just incredible, and that's why Face the Music obviously is so heavy on death, because he's arguably the best character outside of Bill and Ted in the whole franchise. I just think it's a really fun movie, and one that it took it to. They could have quite easily just done time travel again and just gone. And what would have been terrible is if bizarrely they'd have ended up in with the dinosaurs, as it so easily could have been. Do you know what I mean? Like they get lost in a time and then that's it. But no, they went, actually they killed them off, and then they had to come back to life. And I just think it was really good, really fun movie.
And also, I know that you don't care, but Kiss doing the headliner track in there is excellent. That's like one of my overall memories of that film.
While you were loving Kiss, I was loving Megadeth's song for it. But yeah, I mean the use of music through all the movies, to be fair, is pretty fantastic.
That's an excellent soundtrack as well for Bogus Journey. The whole album is an absolute banger. Stu, you've got to be a fan of Bill and Ted, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And it again, they're very much either or for me. I couldn't decide between them. They both got the good points and bad points. Not so many bad points in the first two. But yeah, I'm amazed that they just haven't just played the soundtrack in the Gifford at any point. just left it on. Just see what happens.
They should do, really, shouldn't they? It would be quite fitting. So number 4 for you, please, Stu.
And this is it's a good job I'm only like 5-minute walk away from his house, because I'm going to say Aliens. I just prefer Aliens to Alien, and it's probably because it's at heart an 80s action film with aliens and marines and explosions and nonsense, more than a psychological horror / terrifying. But not going down this route again of what the first film is or isn't. They're completely separate films. They're completely different styles of films, and this is basically just personal preference that I like action films more than horrors. That's all it is. But I've watched Aliens way more times than I've watched Alien. Probably because, for that reason, I guess. I mean, you can't really watch horror films over and over and over again, because you lose the kind of impact, I guess. Whereas silly films with guns and explosions, whack them on as much as you want. Who cares?
Have you seen the Movies That Made Us on Netflix, Jude? The Aliens episode is really good.
Is that one of the new ones?
Yeah, it's a new series. They've done like a Halloween series where they've got a load of different like horror / anything Halloween-y. So Aliens is one of the episodes I just finished watching the other day. Really good episode, though, to be fair.
No, I'll watch that in a bit. I mean, I knew that it had come back, but I wasn't sure what was in there. I hadn't checked it out yet.
It's funny because Aliens doesn't get the credit it deserves for actually having a pretty solid plot in the whole two mothers fighting each other kind of storyline, two badass women fighting each other in the Alien Queen and Ripley. And I think sometimes it does get lumped as purely an action film when there is some, not a lot, but there is some deeper meaning to the themes in that film.
Well, when you go back and watch it with the eye of Prometheus, there's a lot of stuff there. You know, it might have been retrofitted and stuff and whatever, but there's a lot there going on in the background, but literally the background in times that you don't see firsthand. So you are right there.
Yep.
I was quite surprised to learn that it was James Cameron who did Aliens. I assumed that Ridley Scott did all 3 of the original trilogy. I never realised that it was Cameron. So, I mean, for such a big franchise that's so... It's linked, like, intrinsically with Ridley Scott, for that to also have another absolute fucking superstar director taking one of the chapters. I'd imagine that's almost unheard of. I can't think of many other series of films where they've had that, where they've jumped around big names quite like that.
Well, I'm only literally reciting the TV show now, so that I'm not an expert. But I think he was. Oh, he'd had to his name by that point was Terminator 2.
Oh, okay.
So it was still pretty early in his like directorial
No,
career, I believe.
Terminator 2 was.
86
You might have had the
was,
first Terminator.
yeah.
Yes, sorry, no,
1986
sorry.
was
He
the.
had the first Terminator. Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
That's quite a film to make your name on, I suppose. Though, isn't it? Terminator and then Aliens. No wonder he's gone on to make some of the biggest movies of a lifetime, I suppose. My third place film is another third in a series, and it's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I think this is hands down the best of the three because
Oof.
there's only been three so far, and we all know that. Last
Or-
Crusade is fantastic. And I think like the first film's great, the second one's okay. I don't think it's stellar, if I'm being perfectly honest. But I think the third one was brilliant. And part of me might think that part of that is down to having got to see that one in the cinema. I'd have been too young for the original two. I love the interplay between Indy and his father, Henry Jones Sr., Sean Connery. Their back and forth, I think, is exceptional. And that almost makes the film. But then the action set pieces, so the bit where he's on, fighting around all the tanks and he's going to get crushed against the wall. It's proper edge of your seat stuff. I think it's such a good film. And I wish they'd have just left it there. Even now that they're doing the fifth one, like I don't want to see any more. Harrison Ford is far too old at this point to be doing it believably now. So, yeah, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is my favourite of the three because I'm going to ignore the rest.
What film do we have to blame for all of these reboots of frankly geriatric men? Would it be the Expendables? Did that kickstart the trend of all of these kind of?
No, that was kind of the Expendables was kind of in on the joke after it had started up again, wasn't it? So probably Die Hard,
You reckon?
Oh, it could have been. Die Hard 4 was... yeah, that was a
We
low
have-
point,
when- I
wasn't it?
wonder. Yeah, I wonder when we had. I think Rocky Balboa was pretty early on of like the of the older statesmen coming back to do reboots. When was
Yeah.
Red? When was Red with Malkovich?
Red was 2010, which is the same year as The Expendables. Die Hard 4 was 2007. So it possibly is that. Yeah, because it does feel like Bruce Willis was dying a death a little bit and then got something of a bump and then carried on doing just the shit that pays, but obviously doesn't tax him in the slightest. So yeah, I think Die Hard 4 is a good call, really. But then off the back of that, you do get the Expendables, which is where your Stallones and Schwarzeneggers and they've got their second wind. Some maybe deservedly so, others possibly not, I think. Indiana Jones, Matt, you pulled a face when I said Last Crusade. Not a fan?
I am. It's just whenever I think about it, I always think it's not one of Sean Connery's finest performances in it. I just find him a bit hokey cokey in this. But it's perfectly fine as a film. The Indiana Jones trilogy are fantastic, and the first one for me will always be the one that I enjoy the most. I would say there's nothing. I mean, what's there not to like about mythical Germans trying to ruin the world? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's there not to enjoy about that? So it's absolutely fine. It's just it's not the one for me out of the three.
Okay, fair enough. Number 3 for you then, please, Matt.
So after talking almost like I know what I'm talking about for the first two, I'm going to dumb it right down and say the Addams Family Values as now where the Addams Family or the first of these set of films was funny in its slapstick, I guess. This is an oddly, I wouldn't say clever, but it's a bit more tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit more subtle in parts. And it relies a bit more on the dialogue than it does on being kind of a really slapstick and very physical movie. I mean, the whole thing with Uncle Fester, Christopher Lloyd, and Joan Cusack's character, Joan Cusack, who's gorgeous in this, I might add. It's a really entertaining kind of play on the whole kind of Black Widow storyline trope that we get, where and then you have the kids that go off to summer camp, and obviously they're complete outcasts, and they had to start this rebellion within the summer camp. That's a really good arc. But then with Morticia and Gomez and the baby, and who's got a moustache, it's just a really fun. It's just a really fun movie that plays on all of the like silly little nods to horror, like the fact that Morticia always has this really soft lighting on her face, no matter where she is, no matter what scene she's in. She's always got this like light that's on her, just covers her eyes. It's just a very, very fun film that I think is a bit more subtle, and its subtlety helps it, because when it's a bit more slapstick, I don't think you quite realise how funny it is. You're kind of just laughing at people's pain, where this makes gentle digs at arson, murder, and torture, but you laugh about it because it's almost what's the word? Not Schadenfreude, but it's you're laughing at other people's misery and you're enjoying it because it's a bit more subtle.
I was kicking myself when I saw your list had Adam's Family Values on, because you are right. It is an absolutely great film. It's so enjoyable, and it's just sad that it's sort of not forgotten, but maybe it has been slightly forgotten. Like, this generation don't really know who the Addams Family are outside of an animated film now.
I know. I think, and if you were to watch it now, I don't know how you'd feel with fresh eyes on this, because obviously it's I find it very funny, but I don't know if you get the humour nowadays. I think with me lumping some of the films I said to Stu about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, lumping that in with Ghostbusters, I think people would lump in other films to this.
Yeah.
Totally don't deserve it, but just fitting a time period together.
Yeah, I get that. That's fair. Stu, number 3 for you, please.
I think it's a podcast favourite at this point in time. I think I had a mention this month, so let's bring it out. Mad Max Fury Road. Which again, perfect film in every way, shape, or form. Yeah, it's a soft reboot, but it's a sequel, like Andy said at the start, so it counts. But it's not really about Mad Max either. It's more about Furiosa, but it just does everything that the first two, and then Tina Turner do in theory much, much better. And yeah, that's an advancement of time and technology and effects and the whole thing. But I think it's just stunning. Whether you watch it on IMAX, like we did the first time, if you watch it normally, if you watch the noir version, however you watch this film, it's just superb. And it's one of them rare ones that get better every time you watch it. You can't say that about the other ones. Especially the first Mad Max film is quite shit now.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
It doesn't work at all. So then you're left with the other two, which, again, they're all right. They're very much a product of their time. Whereas this seems to just, like I said, get better every time you watch it. So from taking a derelict old franchise that a few nerds liked to being one of the most successful films of recent times, could not be on the list.
Yeah, I think you could make an argument that it doesn't quite fit purely because it's Furiosa's movie, isn't it? But I think the fact that it's got Mad Max in the title, yeah, I think that is fair. And you are right. I mean, I think I only watched the original trilogy maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. I'd never seen them until fairly recently, to be honest. And I remember I watched the first one, and I wasn't going to bother watching the rest of them because it didn't really do anything for me. But as you say, I do think the second one, I think, is a really good movie. The third one's big and pompous and very much of its time. But yeah, Fury Road is just fucking glorious. The visuals alone make it worthwhile watching, I think. So my number 2, and I think this might be controversial because I've said no comic book franchises, is The Dark Knight. It has to be. And my argument is that it's not part of a franchise, it is part of a trilogy of films that are very much standalone. It doesn't, it doesn't bleed out into the wider DC universe. So I think that is fine. Obviously, I've spoke at great length on our comic books episode about The Dark Knight. But this one, this took a film that was Batman Begins, I think, was like a 5-star film, but this was a 7 stars in the Osaka Hall. This one is like Omega Okada 3. This is one of the greatest films that's ever been made. Not just of sequels, just one of the greatest films ever made. There's a reason.
For people that have had sex, those are wrestling terminologies, by the way.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. They'll be like, you, me, and Ash Dolan will get that reference. That's how it.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. It's just, the story is beautiful. The acting is incredible. The direction it's actually quite subtle, the direction. I don't feel like the film has been whipped within an inch of its life like some of Nolan's other movies, which I think you can say for Tenet and Inception. They're very, very Christopher Nolan heavy movies. Whereas The Dark Knight, you feel like he's just let the people who know the characters do their character work, and that's enough. There's a few Nolan-esque flourishes, like the part on the boat where they're having to decide which one they're going to blow up and all that stuff. So there are some Nolan elements to it. But I think this is I don't think this is a heavy Nolan presence in this movie. And I love Christopher Nolan, but I think his decision to not get too involved in it works wonders in this movie. And plus, obviously, Heath Ledger is the second greatest Joker. He's absolutely incredible in this movie. The first, obviously, being Mark Hamill, who is the Joker. Whenever I read the books, it is Mark Hamill's voice I hear coming off the page. But yeah, love it. Dark Knight, tremendous movie. Fellas, are you going to argue with me on that one, or am I allowed it?
I'm not going to argue with you on it, but that does surprise me that you say Heath Ledger is the second best Joker. That really does surprise me, because I would have assumed Nicholson would have been your second.
I'm not a big fan of the Tim Burton Batman.
I know you're not, but I don't know. That's just what it struck me, Stu. Speak sense, not sense, but make me believe what I thought I believed was the truth.
I know what you say is Mark Hamill because of the animated series and the games, and you might as well put Troy Barker in there as well because he does a very good send off of Mark Hamill. But yeah, the only reason it's not on my list is because I play by the rules. That's literally the only reason, because it is one of the greatest films ever made. No argument about it whatsoever. It's better than the first, better than the third, better than pretty much any Batman film ever. So no complaints.
I think in regards to Jack Nicholson's Joker, I've never been able to get past the whole dancing with the devil in the pale moonlight bullshit. Like,
hey, I'm in agreement with you. I'm in agreement with you. By the way, I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. It just surprises me that you've gone down that route. That's all.
Yeah, I remember having a stand-up argument with someone who was trying to tell me that the Joker always would say the pale moonlight line, but I was like, no, I've got a fucking tattoo on my arm. I know what I'm talking about with the Joker. Don't contradict me. And they weren't having any of it. I just got up and walked out at that point. I was having none of that shit. Ridiculous. So Matthew, it's your number 2, please.
So my number 2 would be the 4th film in the franchise. It's not the 4th film, is it? It is. No, it's not. That's not right. It's the 5th film of the franchise. I can't count. It's The Empire Strikes Back, basically. So The Empire Strikes Back, quite simply, is A New Hope being a great film that it is. It was obviously an introduction piece to that world and that universe in film form, and it's a pretty basic good versus evil story. And and a space opera and pretty run of the mill and paint by numbers, and that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But Empire Strikes Back, it has a bit of complexity. It has some character development. It I never felt when watching the first Star Wars that I absolutely had to see more. But at the end of Empire Strikes Back, you absolutely have to see more. And that's because of the culmination of up to this point, nearly 4 hours worth of character development. And it's got the biggest Mandela effect of all films, I think, as well, in the no, I am your father, or Luke, I am your father. People get mixed up between actually what is said. I just think it's an infinitely better film that benefits from the fact that you now are invested in these characters, and actually evil triumphs for the most part, which you don't really get that often when you think about it in movies up to this point. So I just think it's a much better film. Darth Vader is obviously the best thing about that the trilogy, and he's obviously the star of the show in this as well. And I just if you had to force me at gunpoint to watch one of the original trilogy, it's going to be this one every single day of the week.
It's the best Star Wars film, isn't it? Like, hands down, out of all of the ones, not even just the original trilogy, but all of the Star Wars. I don't think anything really does come close to Empire, if I'm being brutally honest.
Rogue
One's great, but it's not Empire, is it? And I think you do make a really good point, because the reason I didn't put it on is because when I think about how much I love A New Hope, that's probably more of an emotional, I love the film, rather than it's a good, great, complex film with really good character development. Because actually, you're right, it's quite basic when you think about it. It is just your bog standard Saturday afternoon Western that you'd find on BBC Two, but just set in space.
You know, in Empire, you know, Luke Skywalker actually becomes more than just this fuckboy. Do you know what I mean? He's not this pussyo anymore. But now in Empire, he's becoming a more complex character. You've got the Han and Leia stuff as well, and it's just infinitely a better film. And that's not to disparage A New Hope. And I think Jedi is it's very much the Back to the Future 3 of that. It's the weakest by a long stretch for me of that trilogy. So yeah, Empire's fantastic, and I'm happy to put my name on that.
I think the problem with Jedi is it's far too long. When on repeat watching, you realise it really drags in parts, which is quite surprising. But I completely agree. Return of the Jedi is not like it's fine, it's fun, but it's not excellent because it goes on too long, I think. Where do you stand on Ewoks though? Because I mean, people of like the generation before me, they hate the Ewoks. They feel about the Ewoks like I feel about fucking Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, but the Ewoks make Jar Jar look like Shaft. What's that? That's space, isn't it?
Yeah.
I understand it, because at the end of the day, by the time you get to Jedi, we're in full marketing mode, aren't we? And we need something to sell, and we need something to bring it back to family friendly. Maybe, I don't know. The Ewok stuff, yeah, it's a little hokey cokey for me, but we are in a universe in these movies where they are showing you the weird and wonderful. We get that in the cantina in the first one, so I'm not massively against them. They're quite funny, like they're quite silly, and at least they don't talk like Jar Jar talks.
Yeah, that is true. Stu, you've got to have an opinion on the Ewoks, surely.
They are. They just print money, don't they? That's all they are. It's like the Porgs in the new ones.
Yeah, fair
We
point.
know exactly
I've got a Porg pop somewhere, so yeah, you are right.
What? Sorry,
Porg pop.
Porg means something very different in my world. If you know, you know.
I'm not going to look.
PORG.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
Not PAWG. No.
Message.
Okay. I know it. Yeah.
We'll save that one for the group chat. the little birds who make that high pitched squeal.
Yes,
Yes,
I know.
yeah, they're the ones.
Apparently, though, they were um, they were actually puffins on that island, and
Okay,
they're CG'd around them because they're native to that island in is it in Ireland itself? Something
I
like that.
think it is. Yeah.
There was some form of bird like a puffin, and so they just changed them a little bit to sell. I'm not saying that there were little midgets in on Endor, and that they just made them fluffy to sell them. But yeah, Ewoks are fine, Porgs are fine, Jar Jar, ruler of the world, no real problem.
Ma-
He should have been in more films. That's his problem
yeah.
because he
Matt has
does.
now ruined Porg for me. Because every time I see them now, I'm only going to think of one thing.
I can't wait till we get some. This will be defining for our fan base because the ones that know and the ones that don't know will form two very different categories within our listenership.
Yeah. Already making a list of which of our followers are going to. If you could ask him what we mean. Yeah. Excellent. Stu, you're up to bat next, please. Your second place.
I think up to bat next after talking about Porg is something altogether different. Godfather Part 2. Simple as. I watched them, as I mentioned before, I watched them this year, the first time in a long time. And the second one is just a complete masterpiece compared to the first. It's one of the best films ever made. How you take it to which, if not unique, very rare kind of concept of having two stories going on at the same time in two different time periods, where you got the flashbacks to Don Vito before he was a Don and all that kind of stuff. It's just a brilliant film. Yeah, it's ridiculously long, but it doesn't feel like it, does it? It doesn't feel like it goes on and on and on. It's perfectly paced. Both stories are genius, and to outdo what they did with the first, it's just sensational. So it had to be on the list.
I mean, that's often the answer. Like that's the Trivial Pursuit's answer to what is the greatest sequel ever made, isn't it? I think that's the one that everyone seems to immediately jump to. Is Godfather 2. It is a masterpiece. It is exceptional filmmaking. I was quite surprised to see on IMDb that Godfather 1 is 9.2 and Godfather 2 is 9.0. Well, no, it's obviously a very small number fraction between the two, but I would have thought you'd have it the other way around. And you say, like, it is a long film, but I don't think it feels a long film. I've seen
No.
shorter films that have felt longer than this movie because the pacing is so well done to it.
I don't feel part two is anywhere near as engaging as the first one. The storyline with De Niro, if that was the whole movie and they did a slower burn with that, hands down it'd be up there as good, if not better. But the whole Cuba thing with Michael and everything, I just don't find it. I don't find it that interesting. I really don't. I'm not saying it's a bad movie at all, but I can understand why The Godfather, the original, the first, is rated higher. And I'm coinciding this with the fact that the book is an incredible read, and the movie does the book real justice in parts as well. But hey, it's apples and oranges.
I don't know if either of you two do you know, is this part 2 based on any of Mario Puzo's other works? Because I know he's done several within the family, hasn't he? But I don't know if
well, it was the Sicilian and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that was anything to do with it. I've not read it. I'm not sure, to be honest.
no. Okay, let us know if you do know, because I'm quite intrigued. I wouldn't mind reading the whole series, but I think there's like about 6 of them, aren't there? There's quite a few different ones to the whole mafia family. Very interesting. But yeah, good choice there, Stu. It's an excellent movie. So we'll do a few honourable mentions now. I've broken mine down into like 3 categories pretty much. The first one is sequels that aren't better, but I've got warmer feelings towards. So like Ghostbusters 2 would probably have been in that one. Gremlins 2, Like I love Gremlins
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, yep, yep.
I've seen two so many more times than I've seen one. I've seen one maybe two or three times. Like, it's good. I enjoy it. It is a good movie, but I will always get to two before I get to one for some reason. Same with Home Alone 2. I love that film. I think it even though it's not as good as the first one, there's just something a bit more warm and inviting about it. And also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, because that was the first film. Like
No way.
it's shit compared to the other two, but that was the first film I went to see. Like with my friend, me and my mate Gemma went to see it. Like my mom dropped me off at the cinema and waited for us to come out, but it was the first film I saw in a cinema on my own. So I've got warm feelings towards that one.
Did you have
My
warm feelings during as well?
no, not at all. Nothing like that. My second category, it's ones where I would get shit if I tried to squeeze them in, like you wouldn't allow it.
Mm.
Westworld, like I don't quite know if it is
Mm.
actually a sequel or not, and obviously it's a TV show as well. Um, but I think the TV series, if it is actually a sequel, there are hints towards it. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think it's just an incredible piece of work. Evil Dead 2, I mean, that is a remake, ultimately. Annoyingly, because that would probably be in my number one place, because I think that is such a good movie. And Kill Bill Volume 2, because it's not really a sequel, it's just the end of the film, pretty much, because, the two together is just one movie. And my third category is the biggest jump in the quality, which was going to be 10 Cloverfield Lane, which we spoke about. So they're my honourable mentions. Matt, what have you got?
So one that again, it's not quality, but it's just what it meant to me. Really, would have been the Crow City of Angels. Now, I picked this because when I was kind of growing up, the Crow obviously was just the in thing amongst my circle of friends, and we all wanted to be the Crow, basically. But I took it one step further in my douchebagness by really getting into City of Angels, because it was kind of like that hipster thing of, oh, you like the Crow? Yeah, I like the Crow. But listen, I've got all four of them on DVD. So it'd be like that, and it's got Iggy Pop in it, and it's actually okay. It's actually pretty good. So for that reason, I've put it in. It's not better, but I feel an affinity towards it. I was going to, but then I thought it's too tenuous, really. Put in Silence of the Lambs, because Manhunter,
Yeah,
Mm.
I've got it as well.
which it's not a sequel of sorts, but it's the same universe, heavily influenced the spiritual successor kind of thing. And in the same vein as I can't have but would like to have had Scarface as well.
Mm.
Obviously, Scarface is a completely different. The Scarface that we love is a completely different Scarface to the original Scarface, but it's not a sequel. However, it's an incredible, incredible movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't seen all four of the Crow movies. Are the third and fourth one actually worth watching?
No,
Is there anything in them?
the guy that plays Angel from Buffy is in number 4, I think. He is the Crow, the guy that plays Angel. I'm sure
Okay.
he is. Let's do it. Let's have a marathon. Why not?
We will pencil that in for early next year then, and we'll do it on the pod. 1 to 4 of the Crow movies.
I don't know. I can't remember what the plot of the third one is. As in, like I remember the fourth one quite vividly because of how bad it is. Like it's really it's so bad. The DVD is an NTSC DVD. Like you can play it on anything. It's Region Zero.
They
Like
just want any old fucker to buy it.
yeah, exactly. But I can't really remember anything about the third one. I'm gonna have to Google it.
No. And as someone who never watched Buffy, like, that doesn't really mean much to me that Angel's in it. Never been my bag. Stu, what's your honourable mentions, please?
I mean, David Boreanaz did like 9 years in Bones, so you could have just talked about that rather than Angel.
Never
Bones
seen
is
that either.
great. Silence of the Lambs was on mine as well for that reason. Because Dean had Manhunter on video for whatever reason, as kids. Dark Knight was on there. Talk about that. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is better than Vacation. It's not just for the
Oh,
not just
that's a
for
tough call.
not just for the Christmas stuff. I think it's just funnier.
It
And
is very good. I don't know if it's better.
but I think my whole list has been what I enjoy more.
Yeah,
Not
that's
that
fair.
it's necessarily better, other than Godfather Part Two. I prefer Christmas Vacation to just Vacation, and I prefer Spider-Man 2 to Spider-Man, which has aged terribly. The Raimi Spider-Mans.
I haven't
Um,
seen them for 15 years at least.
again, watching them in prep for the new one, I was shocked at how shit it is. It's it could be like offcuts from Lois and Clark. Some of the camera work and how it's so unbelievably 90s, even though it was early 2000s. It's so dated now. It just doesn't work at all. And that never used to be the case. I mean, I like the second one anyway with Doc Ock and everything, but
Mm.
the second one's just way more enjoyable now than it maybe it was at the time. But like I said earlier on, I'm basing it on 2021 feelings and not from the past. So Spider-Man 2 would have been in here if we were allowed comics and we didn't cheat.
Obviously, with the new Spider-Man No Way Home, the trailer seems to be centered around a battle with Doc Ock. Is he the right villain to have brought back from the original series of movies? I mean, I think he probably is. I think he's the most interesting, but I don't know what do you pair think?
Um, I think so, especially if they're going down this, as we'll discuss at a later date, I'm sure, timeline route with it. He's got to be, hasn't he? Really? I mean, I think that's when you think of the older Spider-Man movies. I think you think of Doc Ock. So yeah, I think it's the right one to go with.
You in agreement, Stu?
Mm, and he never actually, spoiler alert, you never actually saw him die. He just went into the water.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, obviously, Norman died with his own blade. Sandman, poor bastard. But so, but from them three films, probably Doc Ock was the best. And good old Molina, he seems like a good guy. So give him
Yeah, he
some
just seemed
work.
like a good dude. I quite like Alfred and Lena. In interviews and stuff, he comes across as quite a humble person. What did we think of the Amazing Spider-Man films? Because they seem to have had something of a reevaluation in light of Andrew Garfield being in the new film. I remember hating them, but I haven't watched them for a few years, so I don't know.
I watched the first one again, Amazing Spider-Man, last night,
Hmm.
or Emo Spider-Man as it was known at the time. It was very good, actually. It was a lot better than I remember thinking it was. And I've never seen the second one. I'm gonna watch it tomorrow. I've got it.
Okay.
It's sitting over there. I've never watched it. Probably for that reason that I was part of the oh, this is too dark. Why has he got a skateboard? Why is he such an arsehole?
Was it part of the MCU by this point?
No,
No, it wasn't. Was it? No, because it
No.
was. What was it owned by Sony? Is that was the whole reason
yeah,
why it was?
Hmm.
yeah. It was started. It started off as the fourth film of the Raimi run, and then it spiraled out of control, and then they just rebooted it all. So, and Reese fans is very good and all. It's not. It's just. I think I mean, it was 2012, so
Hmm.
again, it's some of it has aged as you'd expect, like all these things do. But it was a lot better watching it now than it was at the time. And I'm actually kind of weirdly looking forward to watching the second one. It's like a new Spider-Man film I'll get to watch.
All I can remember about the second one is that I remember it feeling very long. It gets to like three quarters of the way through, and you think, "Oh, this should be the end now," and then there's another half an hour, a bit like the last Lord of the Rings movie, where there's just natural end points that they just keep passing. That's all I can remember about the second Amazing Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield's very good, but to be honest, since Spidey, he hasn't really done a fat lot, has he? I can't remember him popping up in much else.
You probably don't need
Just
to work
to
again.
just to take us back to a previous conversation, you know why the fourth Crow film is dreadful?
Go on.
Because Tara Reid's in it.
Oh, Tara Reid, the fallen angel.
There we go.
Christ. We should do Sharknado as well at some point, the whole Sharknado series, just for Tara Reid's performances.
In what state of Tara Reid is she at this point?
2005, so we're talking 3 years post Van Wilder.
Oh, so she still looks relatively normal then at that point.
She's just about to fall off the wagon, though, isn't she? It was like about 2006 or 7 where it went all a bit Pete Tong. Yeah, after Nick Cage, we could just do a Tara Reid marathon. To be fair, I think she'd be quite an interesting character to delve into.
What should we call it? Something, obviously, just to play on words of the Reid, R-E-A-D.
We'll have to ask the fans for our name change because you are right. It does need to be a pun, but I can't quite figure out what it should be. Excellent.
Reading out loud.
Read it and weep. That's what it should be.
Yeah, that's it. Cage fighting, read it and weep. Brilliant. Right, so number one choices then, gents. My number one choice is Paddington 2. Like, the first is fine. It's not a bad film at all. I'm not going to disparage it. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy, and it does give you the good stuff. I really like it. But the second one, I think, is arguably one of the few perfect films. I think there's only a handful of them where everything they do is right and it's accessible to absolutely everybody on planet Earth. And I think Paddington 2 is one of those films. I think it is just a monumental cornerstone of family movies. There aren't many of it which translate as well as Paddington 2 does. I think it is absolutely brilliant. The fact that they had Colin Firth in to do the voice of Paddington originally. I know this is going back to the first one a bit. But yeah, Colin Firth. Everyone loves Colin Firth. He's that genial bloke, that genial British bloke. He's not like Hugh Grant, who's got that little bit of a wild side away from the camera. Colin Firth's everyone's nice guy mate. And he wasn't nice enough to be Paddington, so they had to get Ben Whishaw in to do it. And it was the right move. And ever since that moment, like, everything they've done has just got better and better. And the third film's going to start filming in the second quarter of next year, apparently. Cannot wait to see what's going to come next. Like, it's just such a wonderful, heartwarming, and, like, without going into spoilers, there's one part of it that just absolutely fucking devastates you at one point. It's so well done. And the pullback and reveal is perfect. Lovely film. So Paddington 2 is my favourite. It's my favourite, and I think it's got quite a big jump from like a 7 to an 11 out of 10. Like, it's a, yeah. So yeah, Paddington 2. Matt, what's your numero uno?
Numero uno is Rocky Doos. Rocky 2 for me. Rocky is a great film. The first one is a great film. But it again, in my opinion, suffers from the same thing as A New Hope, really. It's an introduction piece to that world, whereas Rocky 2, it gives you more from a character point of view. You get Rocky experiencing celebrity status and not knowing what to do with it, but then being completely out of his depth financially, emotionally, and everything. You get everything that goes on with Adrian and the coma and him having a son and the strained relationship with Paulie. But then what I think is the best part of it is you get you really get our soul Apollo Creed as well. You know, he's really suffering from his ego in this, and he obviously starts this smear campaign against Rocky, and it's just, he becomes actually the villain as opposed to in Rocky. He's just the one giving him the opportunity. He's not a hero, but he's a plot device almost, Apollo Creed. But in this, he's the villain. And just the way it's done, it's just so, it's more than an underdog story, because we know that he can hang with Apollo Creed by this point. He lasts 12 rounds and he goes the distance in the first one. But it just means so much more when he wins the big one. And of course, it spawned Yo Adrian, I Did It. which people probably think is the first one, which it isn't.
Mm.
I just think I think it obviously it doesn't exist obviously without the first one, but again, it's another extended piece of character development that you really care at this point about the character. By the time you get to Rocky 3, we've got Hulk Hogan in there, we've got Mr. T. It starts to lose its quality, but Rocky 2, when he wins it, is the absolute peak of that series for me, and that's why Rocky 2 is my favourite of the whole series, much less better than the first one.
Excellent choice. I didn't know how you were going to argue that case because I mean, Rocky, the first one, is an Oscar-winning film.
Mm.
It's a really, really good movie, but you do make some really good points on that. Is it the best film or is it your favourite film?
I think it's
I mean,
both.
there can be both, but
I
yeah.
think it's both. You know, a lot of people's favorite is Rocky 4 with Ivan Drago,
Mm.
and it's probably the most entertaining because it's camp and and everything else, but it's not the best in terms of quality by a long shot. Whereas I think Rocky 2 has everything. It has an engaging plot. It has a great fight. It has heart, warmth, but it also has a proper villain before it becomes this before it becomes WWE, basically, as Rocky 3 is. Because even Clubber Lang, he's just a wrestler with boxing gloves on, essentially, in terms of cutting promos the way he does. Whereas obviously Apollo Creed is Muhammad Ali, and it's more of a boxing movie. And I just think it's wonderful. By far my favourite.
Yeah, I think you've made a very good point, and that is why 3 is my favourite.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm obviously a wrestling fan, and it is a wrestling movie, to be perfectly
Oh
honest.
yeah, yeah, it
So
is.
you are
Yeah, yeah.
right. And I think you can tell the difference between 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 in that 1 and 2 are very 70s movies,
Mm-hmm.
whereas 2 and 3 are very 80s movies.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think
agreed.
80s movies don't generally stand the test of time in quality. They can be fun and enjoyable, but they don't tend to have the depth that you associate with the gritty realism of the 70s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that probably plays a part in the whole series of Rocky movies. But yeah, excellent choice.
I even think like going way further on in the timeline. I think Rocky Balboa and the Creed movies have really done a good job of not tainting that world. I think they've tapped into the nostalgia just the right amount. But the Creed franchise, especially Creed 2, you could get away with Rocky Balboa not being in that movie altogether. He plays this quite silly, not silly, trivial thing where his biggest fight in Creed 2 is he's trying to get a light fixed by the council. That's literally it. Like that's literally it.
Okay.
Like it isn't his story anymore, and it's a really good succession. So Creed, I was going to have Creed as a sequel,
Hmm.
but I thought, oh, we're playing hard and fast with the rules here. But yeah, the Creed movies are great as well. If you like Rocky 4, you'll love Creed 2. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. I haven't seen the second one yet. Okay. Stu, you've got to have opinions on Rocky series, surely.
3, 3 all day long.
Yeah, I'm glad
Oh,
we can agree on that.
That's why I kind of raised eyebrow when he said 2 because no one says 2 ever. Three's just more nonsense. Three's more my kind of film. Like if you say it's a wrestling film, yeah, it's just silly. Um, but yeah, the argument stands that 2 is better than 1 in this case.
Mm.
What am I going to watch when I'm having a beer and I'm hungover or I've got mates round? I'm watching 3 or 4. So it's not bad. It's just a different. It's a different target audience, a different feel. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my personal favourite.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you've argued your case perfectly. Ad Stewart, round us off with yours, please.
I just remembered an honourable mention that I forgot about that I hadn't wrote down, and I had to mention it for Dave Mighty Ducks Part 2 because he'll say it anyway. Um,
Yeah.
but it was Short Circuit 2 is a better film than the first one.
Mm. It is
The-
like the first one's fine, but if there was no sequel, you wouldn't be bothered. But yeah,
yeah,
two's excellent.
I'm guessing that Matt's too young again for this, and it doesn't
Probably,
resonate
yeah.
with him at all.
Speaking double Dutch to me, I have seen Short Circuit, but I've not seen the second one.
Oh,
Do I
this
need
is
to?
yes,
Yes, the
immediately.
best one. There is a bit of blackface in there, which is the only questionable thing from what I can recall.
Well, it's a bit of blackface. He's playing an Indian man from the whole film.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of blackface. Yeah, fair point.
Very much like Ian McCall. Is it Ian McCall? In Ghostbusters 2, playing the guy from wherever he's supposed to be, some Romanian guy with that silly Romanian accent. He's not blacked up, obviously, but
Shit, yeah.
it's
Forgot
just
about that.
this is ridiculous. But yeah, my actual number one is very similar to Aliens to Alien. Really, you're going from a sci-fi horror to sci-fi action, and it is, of course, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, one of the greatest films ever made. Again, and I've owned it in every possible way so far. Had it on video, then DVD, then Canadian DVD with the extras put in to make it even longer. Then on Blu-ray, then 3D Blu-ray, and it doesn't matter whatever cut of the film that you watch anymore. Really, every single one of them is perfect. It's a better film than the first one. It's more entertaining than the first one. It's funnier than the first one, obviously, because it's slightly different. But it's almost like a cliche that you have to mention T2 in everything possible, but you do because it's class. You can't really you can't and no one can argue against Terminator 2 being in any sequel list ever. It's just better than the first one.
It is like the first one's fine. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to badmouth it. It's a good movie, but again, if they did nothing after on the back of Terminator 1, you wouldn't have been massively surprised. It wasn't anything that people were clamouring for to be continued. But you see Terminator 2, and it is such a departure from the first film, and it is infinitely better than the first one. And granted, I've only seen the 3 films, but of the first 3 films, it is head and shoulders above the rest.
It's also got the third best Guns N' Roses song featured in it as well. You Could Be Mine. There we go.
I'd say it's got probably the best on-screen explosion of anything. But that's always the first film I come to when I think of on-screen explosions, when they blow up that building. Like, it just looks visually stunning. It's incredible, especially for a film that was early 90s, I believe, 91?
92, I think.
92.
Yeah, and it was a miniature as well.
Was it really? I did not know that.
Yeah, it was bigature in the Lord of the Rings parlance. Yeah, it was a model.
Shit, I did not know that. He's like, I genuinely could not tell. Like, it looks exceptional. It's so well done. Brilliant direction in that movie, I think. So obviously that is our top 5s for the best sequels done. But please let us know what your favourite sequels are. Send us your lists to cagefightingpod@gmail.com or on the Twitter @cagefightingpod. Please make sure that you're subscribed and that you're following us on whatever podcaster that you're using. And please make sure that you leave us a review. Next up, we have got a Picture Pod episode where we are delving into the world of Pig. Obviously, it's a film that you've heard us mention several times before. But yeah, I fully recommend that you give that movie a watch. It is available on DVD, but also check justwatch.com because it may be streaming in your area as well. So for this week, Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
See you later, everybody. Tell a friend, tell them to get in touch with us and that you sent them, and we'll give you a shiny penny.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
I'll be back.
It's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.